to the world of ancient mythology. A world of gods and heroes who were frequently ungodly and as often unheroic. But in almost every myth, there's a grain of reality. And in this series, we'll try to find the grain that exists in every legend. This voyage will take us to 3 continents and many countries, unearthing clues, piecing together fragments of fact and some marvelous fiction to do with the private lives, sometimes sensational, often deplorable, of our leading characters. The Tiber, described by the poet Virgil as a mighty torrent plunging in gentle currents to become an endless sea. Here at the mouth of the Tiber, says Virgil, sailed Aeneas, a fugitive from Troy, and laid the foundations of the city that was to become Rome. A city that would rule the world for centuries and eclipse even the fame of Mount Olympus. But the actual establishing of the city was left to his descendants, Romulus and Remus. And even these 2 brothers almost failed to fulfill their destiny. They came close to being drowned. Tiber, the river god, saved them. After all, they were the sons of Mars, the god of war, and Tiber could ill afford to make an enemy of that notoriously irritable deity. Almost as if on purpose, a she-wolf went down to the river that day to quench her thirst. And so 2 boys, suckled by a wolf, became the symbol of a new city. A city which Romulus surrounded with ramparts. As they grew older, Remus ridiculed the walls by jumping over them. Romulus killed him for his trouble. But according to historians, Rome wasn't founded at all. Far from being built in a day, Rome emerged from an agglomeration of small tribes living in the shadow of the nearby Etruscans. Perhaps Lupa di Roma, the Roman she-wolf herself, could tell us more. The figures of the 2 boys were not added until the 15th century. The she-wolf statue itself is some 2,000 years older, the work of Etruscans. The Etruscans, a race of men still surrounded in mystery. Even their language has remained undeciphered. Most of our information comes from their cities of the dead, their graves. The Etruscans lived mainly in central Italy, in what is known today as Cerveteri, about 30 kilometers from Rome. One thing we do know for certain, their culture and civilization deeply influenced Rome. Rome pooled the knowledge of both the Greeks and the Etruscans, and Rome became great. These graves, many of them uncovered recently, date from the 5th century BC. On the tomb walls, we find evidence that the Etruscans didn't live all their lives in deadly earnest. Even on their sarcophagus, they can be found smiling. For example, during one banquet, what we would call a stag party today, during the reign of the last Roman king, Tarquinius Superbus, himself of Etruscan origins, the conversation soon centered on women. Each male praised the virtues of his wife, her delicacy, her industriousness, her modesty. Until someone had the brilliant idea that they should spy in on their wives to see what they were up to in their absence. The surprises that followed were not exactly pleasant. The girls were whooping it up. Only one of them, Lucretia, was actually at work. The historian who recorded the event, however, fails to mention that Lucretia was a pure-blooded Roman without a drop of Etruscan blood. Perhaps one should mention that it was pure-blooded Lucretia who brought about the fall of the Roman kingdom. But this happened long after the death of Romulus. In his time, Rome was actually a military fort, and there were no women. The Romans solved that problem in true military fashion. They enticed the neighboring Sabines to a party, and what happened afterwards can be seen from this famous work known as the Rape of the Sabines. Fairy tales, legends, myths. The city of Romulus became the greatest city in Italy. Its armies gradually took control of the entire ancient world. Romulus's city. And what happened to the founder? The most common version tells how on the 17th of February, calendar year unspecified, Romulus was reviewing a military parade on the field of Mars. From high above, the god of war himself watched Romulus with deep affection. And then Mars decided to send down his own chariot for Romulus. The founder of Rome was taken to heaven alive and became a god. The former Martian Fields, later the Stadium of Emperor Domitian, today the Piazza Navona. It's a happy piazza, the center of Rome's bohemian population.
La vergogna. No, è vergogna che peraltro le della
It's rather lost its identity as a military camp, without a woman in sight, and to describe it as a field of Mars would hardly be appropriate. It almost looks as though Mars, the god of war, has abandoned Rome and left it to Aphrodite, the goddess of love.